Hey, good afternoon. It's 3:06, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour from the Federalist, John Daniel Davidson is here. He'll talk to us about J.D. Vance's big interview on CBS this weekend and how he got the better of Margaret Brennan, of course. Bill Brown joins us, former Navy SEAL. That's at 4:30. We talked to him about Pete Hegseth arriving as Secretary of Defense today, showing up this morning. Ken Cuccinelli is also here at 5:30 today. We will chat with him about all of these deportations going on across the country, getting these violent criminals out of our country. Why are they here? The Biden administration knew about them and just let the rapists and murderers keep roaming the streets? Tom Homan's literally out in the middle of the night picking them up. God bless him for that. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I have to say, one of the joys I have in life right now, I was just telling Corey, as I tell him almost everything, is reading the subreddit for Northern Virginia. I've been reading, the same is true in Montgomery County, Maryland, by the way. But if you read these online forums where people talk about their local community, it's federal employees complaining that Donald Trump was just elected and is actually fulfilling the vision that people voted for. I just read one. It says that he's got a buddy in a 3-letter agency, and they just received an email this morning that they have to go to work 5 days a week now. 5 days a week, work from office. And they're acting as if this is the most radical concept they've ever encountered. What a bunch of Nazis. Working from an office? What is this? Hitler's Germany? It's so crazy what's going on. It is, in some sense, it's so satisfying to read it because isn't it nice to have a president who runs on something and then instantly fulfills it? They can't even accuse him, although they often try, of duplicity. He didn't pull a fast one. He's not pulling the wool over your eyes. He's not tricking anybody into anything. He literally ran on this stuff. I'm going to send federal employees back to work. I'm going to fire the dead weight in the federal workforce. I'm going to get rid of the racial prejudice, the DEI crap. I am not going to enable mental illness. I'm not going to allow people to say that they were born in the wrong bodies and then enable their self-destruction. I'm not doing that. He runs on all of that. Pardon January 6th defendants. He runs on all of that. And wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. We are just over a week into the Trump presidency as of this hour. We are 3 hours past a full week right now. And he's done more in that time frame than Joe Biden did in all 4 years for the benefit of this country. It is such a breath of fresh air. I can't tell you the number of people that I run into now who tell me that their attitude has changed dramatically for the better, that they've been walking on clouds practically since the election, and certainly since the presidency of Donald J. Trump began, the 47th. They love it. I run into people at church every weekend who say the same thing to me. Man, this is great. Totally right. Totally right. It is great. It is great to see. It's great to see somebody who actually fulfills what he promised to fulfill, who runs on something and then does it. And the left, boy, are they not grasping at straws right now? Are they not grasping at straws to try and figure out a line of attack? They have no idea what to do. They were hoping all of these deportations would result in video footage of a kid in a diaper being pulled out of a minivan and thrown into a scary government vehicle as the mother screams that her child's being taken. This is what they were hoping for. This is the footage the left desired. They couldn't wait for the deportations because they thought they could use them against Trump. Look at him. He's separating families. He's hurting children. That they're panicking that he's going to raid the schools. He's going after the elementary school students. He's doing no such thing. You know what he's doing? He's taking rapists off the street. They're rounding up terrorists, literally terrorists. They're picking up murderers, sex offenders. And not only are they doing it, they're capturing it on video. They're putting these guys inside of the back of police cruisers as they lean out the windows and they curse Donald Trump's name. And the rest of us thank him for undertaking a mission that should have been done a long time ago. In fact, this mission should have never been required. Biden should have never flown these people in the first place. And yet, here we are. So on the Northern Virginia forums, on the subreddit for Northern Virginia, Nova, which is fun. I like lurking there. I just watch, and now I mock these people, and hopefully it gets back to them. But They're posting today, additionally, about the fact that in Fairfax County, Virginia, the superintendent of schools there is an idiot, Michelle Reed, in Fairfax County. And they are hysterical right now, hysterical, that ICE raids are about to take place inside all of the schools in Fairfax County. And what to do. Fairfax County sent out, the government schools sent out a notice to parents to let them know, Michelle Reed did, that she's been meeting with all of the principals. I've been meeting with all the principals, getting ready for deportation raids at Fairfax County schools. Well, let me point out an obvious thing right out the gate. If you are at a place where you think that it's very likely that all of your institutions are being raided, you realize how bad that is for the country and for the community? Oh, so government schools are loaded up with illegal foreign nationals? With the families of illegal foreign nationals? What does that tell you? It tells you our system's in complete chaos. And their answer is not to resolve that chaos, but instead to exacerbate it and figure out ways to how do we deter immigration enforcement. That's their starting point. And also, it's like totally ludicrous because even Tom Homan himself, that bulldog, is saying, no, we're not raiding schools. This is not on our agenda list. That's so far away from our current agenda. Our agenda is to get the most violent possible people out of our country immediately. We are doing targeted deportations because we have to make the country safe. That's priority one. That is priority one. And in Fairfax County, Michelle Reed sends out a note. They're covering it in this publication, Annandale Today, over the weekend. As fears mount following President Trump's threat to deport many more immigrants. False. Illegal aliens. Gosh, these people lie for a living. Including those here legally. What? Listen to this sentence. As fears mount following President Trump's threat to deport many more immigrants, including those here legally. That is false. Fairfax County Public Schools Superintendent Michelle Reed told Annandale Today, quote, we are committed to the fullest extent of the law to protecting our students and staff. Reed says she met with all the principals last week. Quote, we give them very clear direction on our policies and practices. The policy of ICE agents detaining parents while children are in school is a huge concern among immigrant families, said Mason School Board member Ricardi Anderson. Quote, there's a lot of anxiety. Kids, families, communities are worried. We're doing our best to ensure that the policies we have put in place and the trust policy, which I helped put forward in 2022, will be strong enough. What? That your trust policy will be strong enough? The trust policy, quote, confirms the school board's commitment to providing a safe and welcoming space for all students and their families. It also says, quote, a safe and inviting environment would be disrupted by the presence of immigration agents or ICE enforcement activities. Such activities create a climate of fear and stress that would impact all students. Quote, we have to reach out and remember our humanity. These are kids, Anderson said. There's no reason for kids to go home to empty households. There's no reason for people to worry about kids being dragged out of school, potentially in handcuffs. Okay. Tom Homan made the point over the weekend, and I'll reiterate the point now, that if there are people, in fact, it was Stephen Miller, actually, who made an excellent point to this effect, standing out in front of the White House. If, for whatever reason, ICE agents do have to go into a school right now, the reason that is occurring is because there is a threat to the children in that school. This is not designed to make children's lives less safe. This is to enhance the safety of our children. We need to enforce our immigration laws. And right now, priority one is getting rid of the most violent offenders. The most violent offenders. Here's Tom Homan over the weekend. He was hanging out with Dr. Phil, who apparently is filming a video of all of this and sharing some of it online. And Dr. Phil straight up asked him, Tom Homan, are you going into the schools?
Straight up, are you going into schools and arresting children at schools?
No.
Is anything like that happening?
No, sir.
Are you going into businesses and sweeping through there and taking anybody with a tan and seeing where they're from?
We go into businesses for a criminal enforcement operation, but again, sweeps don't occur anywhere.
The sweeps are not occurring. You're just not going in like seining for fish in a pond and just picking up. You're going targeted. If a criminal is working in a business and you have to pick them up there, you're going in for that target.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You know, they're deporting about 1,000 people a day right now. 1,000 people a day. We're reaching unseen levels of government operations to go after these violent criminals. And these are the feds. The reason they have this list, thousands of people, is they know who's in the country. They know who's been processed in. They're targeting people based on their knowledge of them. And so they're acting on it. Here's Homan and Dr. Phil in Chicago straight up arresting a pedophile on the street, an actual sex offender. The left is going to mount a defense of keeping this guy in the country on the street, running free?
What's your name?
Seda.
Seda what? You have a first and last name.
Sam.
Seda Sam?
Yes.
Where you from?
Where I was born or where I'm from?
Where you born?
Thailand.
You been deported before from the United States?
No.
Never been deported?
But I've been in the system before.
EMB.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What have you been charged with
Charged where?
before?
This is Dr. Phil asking the questions.
I'm not gonna say that. I'm not talking about lawyer.
Yeah. Are you a citizen?
My mom's a citizen.
Your mother's a citizen,
Yes.
but you're not?
Nope.
But you've never
How'd that happen?
been deported before?
We Dr. Phil. We got Dr. Phil.
Yeah? How do you know me?
No, I seen Dr. Phil, on TV.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is an example of sanctuary cities, right? We got an illegal alien convicted of sex crimes involving children, and he's walking the streets of Chicago. Again, the downfall, the problem with the sanctuary city, that people like us walking the street rather than local law enforcement working with federal agents. This is what we're dealing with.
Yeah, because Chicago's a sanctuary city. So this guy's committing sex crimes on children, and then Chicago releases him, even though ICE says, detain him, don't release him. They release him right onto the streets. So here is this guy. Imagine me, this guy. He's getting arrested now by Tom Homan and Dr. Phil in the middle of the streets of Chicago. And Homan tells Dr. Phil something he didn't know. This guy's a sex criminal. He's performed horrific sex acts on children.
Yeah. You've been charged with sex crimes with children?
Not really.
Not really?
You don't usually equivocate on the answer to that question, do you?
And never been deported?
Nope.
Huh.
Let's take him in and process and lock him up.
Got it, sir.
Tom Homan, take him into processing, lock him up. Lock him up. Thank God. If you're a Chicago resident, you are thanking Homan for doing that. You should be. And you shouldn't be voting for these Democrats who made your life a nightmare to begin with. Tom Homan emphasizes to Dr. Phil that the whole point of this is to not scare children, but instead to protect them. It is the entire point.
Social media saying ICE was attacking our elementary school. He's scaring children. He's scaring the neighborhood, putting fear in the community. We're doing the exact opposite. We're saving children. Every sexual predator we arrest means more safe children. So God bless the men and women of ICE. As you've seen today, we're not sweeping neighborhoods. This is a target enforcement operation. We spent a lot of time investigating these people. We know exactly who we're looking for. So it's a target enforcement operation. It's the right thing to do.
It's a targeted enforcement operation. It's the right thing to do. You're damn right it is. And there's nothing even closely controversial about doing it. The controversy is the fact that it got this bad to begin with. So, Tom Homan, that makes me feel very good about the efforts to get control of this problem. Tom Homan, I don't know about you. It definitely makes me feel good doing it. Because, there's a lot of swamp creatures out there. There's a lot of people that, President Trump could have named to a gig, and they may have done a middling job, or it might have been out of your sight, and it's not efficient, it's not aggressive, it doesn't address any of the underlying problems. I don't have that fear with Tom Homan. Tom Homan has been crystal clear about what he intended to do and now what he is doing in this role as border czar, and he's living it. He's not sitting in some air-conditioned office. He's not back in Washington. He's not the kind of guy that you just see once a month. Maybe he spends his entire tenure doing cable news hits or whatever. No, that's not it at all. The guy's on the street. The guy's on the street gathering criminals, getting 1,000 people at least out of the country with each passing day. And there are reports that the Trump administration wants to get more aggressive. The Washington Post this weekend says that they're looking to target on average 1,200 of those types of people every single day. Is that everything? No. But it is more than a great start, and I'll take it because it's a lot better than the last 4 years. All right, let's go to the phones. I've got Bruce calling in from Riverdale, Maryland, line 5. Hello, Bruce. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Well, Vince, thank you. I have a problem with what they're doing in the Virginia school system above and beyond what they're doing now, what we're hearing about.
Who's they?
Pension, the swampy critters, how about them? The folks that are in favor of open borders.
Oh, yeah. You have a problem with what the open borders people have done to our communities.
Yeah, and what they're doing right now in the school system in Virginia.
Yeah.
I think Fairfax, they're telling those kids that you got to be careful because the immigration, they're going to come in and scoop you guys up and ship you back home. That's not going to happen. We know it's not going to happen, but that keeps the freaking pot boiling for all of us and in our culture right now.
Yeah, no, they're chaos merchants for sure. And the other piece here is that if there's any lesson from all of this, like I love how the defense that they're mounting is like it's totally fine to be here illegally. No, it's not actually. It's not. And to the extent that anybody's culpable, one, it's our government for allowing this to happen, and two, it's the adults who did it in the first place. If you came here illegally, you broke the law. I'm sorry, but there are consequences for that. There should be, and we should have a sensible immigration system.
And I've got, my kids went through the PG County school system.
Yeah.
They have friends that are not in the country legally. I've quote, adopted son that he's illegal. His next brother is legal because that's about the time they came into this country. He's a good guy. He's working hard.
Sure.
He's here for no fault of his own. And when we talk, I can just see the change in him when they change some of these laws and the worry. But they're keeping us driving a wedge between us so they can take care of us one by one.
It is crystal clear what the American voter wants here. They want a common sense immigration system. They want their sovereignty. They want order. And they want to be treated as if U.S. citizenship actually means something. And it's not just some frivolous thing that you can give away to any foreign national who happens to swim across the Rio Grande or overstay a visa or a Chinese national who comes up from the Darien Gap. None of this makes sense to people. They voted for order. They voted to have their country back. And so that means you've got to clean up the mess. And this is what's happening right now. At least a component of it, and you hope it continues. Because otherwise, this whole thing falls apart. You've got to have order. And the left is working against that. The American people are wildly for it. Donald Trump has never been more popular as president of the United States than he is right now. And that's because he's doing what he said he would. Joining us in a moment, John Daniel Davidson from The Federalist. We'll talk about J.D. Vance's big appearance on CBS this weekend and Catholic Charities, that organization, their role in human trafficking, and how J.D. Vance is speaking out against it. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 3:36 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Bill Brown, former Navy SEAL, will be with us at 4:30 as Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth arrives at the Pentagon. We'll discuss. Bill worked very hard for that. We'll get his reaction to day one. Ken Cuccinelli is here at 5:30, former Virginia Attorney General, former Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security. We talked to him about Tom Homan's important and effective first week trying to get control of the nation's migration problems, all the illegal aliens who are here. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. J.D. Vance, for some reason, decided that his first gigantic interview would be done with a very sanctimonious hostess by the name of Margaret Brennan over on CBS's Face the Nation this weekend. And she was awful. Let's be honest. She was awful. But J.D. Vance is better than me. He handled it really well. He was calm, cool, and collected and just stuck to the facts. Here he was.
You campaigned on lowering prices for consumers. We've seen all of these executive orders. Which one lowers prices?
We have done a lot, and there have been a number of executive orders that have caused already jobs to start coming back into our country, which is a core part of lowering prices. More capital investment, more job creation in our economy is one of the things that's going to drive down prices for all consumers, but also raise wages so that people can afford to buy the things that they need. If you look at our slate of executive orders.
Yeah, so grocery prices aren't coming down, she said. Again, the left, desperate for a talking point here. They're like, well, how come Trump hasn't brought down the price of eggs in his first 5 days in office? So you're saying Trump created bird flu? Is that the the latest approach here? Here to join us and assess all of this, John Daniel Davidson is on the phone. He's the senior editor over at The Federalist. John, good to have you back with us, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, so I got to say, I don't know if you feel this way, but I thought J.D. Vance maintained his composure in an environment where I would not have been able to do that.
Oh, absolutely. He's very good at that. Every time he goes on one of these shows, he just puts on a master class in how to deal with the corporate media, how not to accept their premises of their sort of loaded questions, and it really gives substantive responses to their talking points.
Yeah, for sure. And so he did well on the economy. By the way, I love her stupid gotcha. She's like, which one actually lowers prices? Well, if you read the executive orders, and I thought you were supposed to be a newswoman, there were a bunch of executive orders that directly addressed prices, including President Trump signed an EO that directed every federal agency to make it their mission to bring prices down for American citizens. And J.D. Vance had a big one, John Daniel Davidson, which is energy. If we can get energy up and running, we can bring down the price of everything.
Yeah, that's right. It represents, and, Vance did a great job of highlighting those things that actually do bring prices down in a real economy. And it highlighted the difference in how this administration is going to approach these problems versus how the Biden administration approached it, which is to print money, give handouts to people, debt spending, and then blame corporations for quote unquote price gouging when their own policies were driving inflation for the past 4 years by flooding the economy with a supply of printed fake money.
Yeah.
And J.D. Vance sort of like answered that with the other side of the coin, the other perspective, which is, the economy is a real place where there's a real exchange of goods and services. And if the government can do things to bring down some of those cost drivers like fuel and energy prices, that redounds to everything else in the economy.
Another topic that came up is the state of our border and the fact that President Trump wants to restore the 14th Amendment to what it's supposed to be, which was it was designed to protect equal rights for all citizens. And in particular, when it came to birthright citizenship, the 14th Amendment was designed to ensure that freed slaves were considered citizens of the United States. That's what the point of the 14th Amendment was. But meanwhile, the left is trying to turn it into any Chinese tourist who comes to America gets a free U.S. citizen if they give birth here. Here's what J.D. Vance had to say on that.
If you come here on vacation and you have a baby in an American hospital, that baby doesn't become an American citizen. If you're an illegal alien and you come here temporarily, hopefully, your child does not become an American citizen by virtue of just having been born on American soil.
And left with nothing to respond, Margaret Brennan decided she would wield a stupid bumper sticker to try and attack him.
Oh, well, this is a country founded by immigrants.
Well, this is a country founded by...
country.
This is a very unique country, and it was founded by some immigrants and some settlers. But just because we were founded by immigrants doesn't mean that 240 years later that we have to have the dumbest immigration policy in the world. No country says that temporary visitors, their children, will be given complete access to the benefits and blessings of American citizenship.
It doesn't mean we have to have the dumbest policy in the world, John Daniel Davidson.
What a great line. Great response from J.D. Vance. Yeah, and, it was great, but I will say he could have pushed back harder. This country wasn't founded by immigrants. The people who first came to this country, the English settlers and colonists, weren't immigrants. There wasn't a nation that they were emigrating to. They came and for the most part settled a wilderness. So this notion that we're a nation founded by immigrants is totally false. And that was an opportunity that J.D. Vance could have rejected.
Yes.
The premise of the question. He did pretty well in pivoting, with that great line that we don't have to have the dumbest immigration policy in the world. And that underscores another point. No nation in the world today has the kind of insane asylum, refugee, and immigration policies that we have. If you try to do what people do to getting into America in any other country, you would be arrested and held until they deported you at best. But you might actually just sit in a prison in another country for a long time. That includes people trying to sneak into Mexico, by the way, or Canada. So it's a point very well taken.
Let me get to something I really want to discuss with you, which is the Margaret Brennan brought up the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. Now, she attempted, really what she's doing here is she's attempting to wield J.D. Vance's faith against him. That's the
Yeah.
point of this exchange. But I thought J.D. Vance handled himself very well and was able to level some real criticisms at Catholic bishops in the United States, and in particular, by inference, Catholic Charities. Take a listen to this exchange.
Yeah.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops this week condemned some of the executive orders signed by President Trump, specifically those allowing immigration and customs enforcement to enter churches and to enter schools. Do you personally support the idea of conducting a raid or enforcement action in a church service, at a school?
Well, let me address this. Of course, if you have a person who is convicted of a violent crime, whether they're an illegal immigrant or a non-illegal immigrant, you have to go and get that person to protect the public safety. That's not unique to immigration. But let me just address this particular issue, Margaret, because as a practicing Catholic, I was actually heartbroken by that statement. And I think that the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops needs to actually look in the mirror a little bit and recognize that when they receive over $100 million to help resettle illegal immigrants, are they worried about humanitarian concerns, or are they actually worried about their bottom line? We are going to enforce immigration law. We're going to protect the American people.
Yeah.
Donald Trump promised to do that. And I believe the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, if they're worried about the humanitarian costs of immigration enforcement, let them talk about the children who have been sex trafficked because of the wide open border of Joe Biden.
You personally
let them talk
support them
about
going into
people like
schools
Laken
and
Riley who were
churches.
brutally murdered. I support us doing law enforcement against violent criminals, whether they're illegal immigrants or anybody else, in a way that keeps us safe.
What'd you think of that exchange, John Daniel Davison?
Yeah, that was great. Another very good and substantive response. It doesn't accept the premise that the Trump administration is going to sort of send armed agents swarming into schools. You know, there was another great response to a similar question by Stephen Miller, who said, if ICE right now, which right now ICE is going after violent criminals, sort of the worst of the worst that have been just, let slide by the Biden administration. If ICE is going into a school right now to make an arrest, that means that they're prioritizing the safety of those school children, right? That means that there is some adult in that school who's a violent criminal with deportation orders that needs to be apprehended. The Biden administration wouldn't do it. The Trump administration has said, we're going to do it. We're going to enforce our laws. So it's a great point that can't be emphasized enough, that what's happening here with the enforcement is for the safety and protection of American citizens. And yes, including school children, if one of these violent criminal aliens happens to be in a school.
But this point that she attempted to make, Margaret Brennan attempted to make, which is, the Catholic bishops are condemning these executive orders to get control of the migrant crisis, the alien crisis in the country. J.D. Vance pointed to something that is very real, which is that Catholic Charities has taken in hundreds of millions of dollars of federal taxpayer money, and quite unfortunately has served as kind of the last several 100-mile delivery system for an awful human trafficking arrangement. And look, I this is near and dear to me as a Catholic, for one, but also as a guy who really does support so much of the other work that Catholic Charities does. But in particular, this mission of helping enable this system of exploitation and bringing in illegal foreign nationals into the country, this is an atrocity.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. And look, I say this too as a Catholic. It's a scandal. And J.D. Vance could have been a lot meaner to the Catholic bishops, who for the most part are totally out of touch with where ordinary Catholics are on this issue. They like to talk about immigration because it's not controversial. They don't get called bad names in the press. And so that's why they talk about it 10 times more than they talk about other moral issues like abortion or gay marriage. And it's a grift. As you mentioned, it's a giant grift, not just for Catholic Charities, but for other Christian aid organizations that are involved, as you say, in the last leg of the pipeline that's controlled by these cartels. People think that trafficking stops at the border. It doesn't. Every person who crosses the border is being trafficked, and many of them are having to send remittances back to their home country, not just to their families, but to the cartels who have all their information, because they don't get to cross the border until they give all their information to the smuggling organizations that work for the cartels. And so they're basically debt slaves when they get here, and we don't talk about that enough. And so the Catholic Charities and other Christian immigration and migration NGOs are part of it, and it's a massive, massive scandal that needs to be called out in as forceful terms as possible.
Yes, and they're not alone. There's a bunch of them. They're the most well-known among them. But this is something I'm a little surprised that we haven't yet seen an executive order. Perhaps I missed it. There have been hundreds. Defunding these NGOs, which I do feel like is likely to come in the near term from President Trump.
Yeah, I hope there is an order like that. It's desperately needed because these aid organizations are complicit in a humanitarian atrocity that's going on at the border. They are aiding, and in some cases, and I've written about this in the past, and it's been reported about in the past, in some cases are actively aiding smuggling organizations, which means they're actively aiding the cartels that victimize these migrants.
So here's another example of what we're talking about. I mean, it'd be one thing if you were, offering a warm meal and a place to stay to someone who needed it.
Right.
It's another entirely when you hire attorneys to advise people on how to evade immigration enforcement. Here's a Catholic Charities video of a woman called Barb Graham. She's an attorney for Catholic Charities, advising illegal aliens in the United States how they can avoid deportation.
Hi, my name's Barb Graham, and I'm an attorney at Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Milwaukee in the Refugee and Immigration Services Program. This is a video about knowing your rights if Immigration and Customs Enforcement approaches you. All people living in the United States, including people who are undocumented, have certain rights under the United States Constitution.
Listen, this is not a charitable effort, John Daniel Davidson. What that is trying to help illegals keep a low profile and avoid being held accountable for the laws that they violate in the United States.
Yeah, it absolutely needs intervention from federal authorities, an executive order, whatever the mechanism is. But it's blatantly illegal behavior, aiding and abetting illegal immigrants in helping them break the law. It's also, I should just mention too, profoundly un-Catholic. There's nothing about Catholic teaching or tradition that says Catholics or anyone is better off in one country versus another. This is a case where there's this assumption that the only just or the only acceptable place for any person in the world to be is the United States, and that Catholics in other countries, they can't be good Catholics there. They can't be good Christians there. They can't have thriving lives and communities in these other places. It's total nonsense, and it needs to be called out by Catholic leadership.
And by the way, as long as I've been going to church, my entire life, every Catholic church I've been associated with, there's always international efforts that they're supporting in small villages and towns and communities and sister churches. And there's always international charity efforts. Catholics are very generous. And yet, that generosity is being taken advantage of, and it's advancing cruelty, whether the people involved with it realize it or not. I'm just here to tell them that that's what's happening. John Daniel Davidson, thank you, as always. Good to talk to you today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We got a phone call coming in from Michael, who's in New Mexico. Sir, you are on the Vince Coglianese Show.
I'm amazed I got through. Thank you for that last segment. That was so on the spot about the Catholic Church. I am actually a priest, and I'm frustrated about what's been going on, and especially the involvement in trafficking, everything else. You guys were spot on. Kudos to you guys for the great work you're doing. I was in your area last year working, and really love WML and the great work you're doing. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Hold up a second. So is this Father Michael then? Or are you you're a Catholic priest?
I'm Father Michael. Yes, I am.
Okay, so Father Michael, one of the things I've heard, I talked to a priest friend about Catholic Charities, and he told me he loves almost every mission that Catholic Charities does. He loves them. He said at one point he took a tour of a bunch of their facilities. He visited all their efforts to help the poor, and he said it's wonderful. He said the one place he went where he didn't feel the intrinsic Catholic mission was the illegal immigration, trafficking thing. Like what they call refugee services. He's like, it was the one place, I think there wasn't even a crucifix on the wall when he went. He said it was the one place where he didn't feel the faith.
Wow. I mean, I haven't been that close to it, but yeah, my feelings are the same as his there. And it's just like, no, this does not seem to be right for Catholics to be so directly involved in there.
Yeah, it seems like a big issue. And you've got the government's hands all over it, hundreds of millions of dollars. Thank you, Father Michael. Thanks for tuning in, no matter where you are. Really appreciate that.
Thanks for taking my call. You're doing a great job, and God bless you all.
God bless you. There he is. Father Michael, sometimes here, mostly in New Mexico. Glad he called in today. All right. Kevin Roberts of the Heritage Foundation joins us next. Bill Brown, former Navy SEAL, in the next hour as well. It's all ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show.